So there are very few worlds, there are very few films that we love to get immersed in, unlike Middle Earth. And my guest today is from that very world. He's here to promote the Supernova Pop Culture Expo, and he's been on a little bit of a unexpected journey of sorts. It's Stephen Hunter. Stephen, thanks so much for joining me, mate. I really appreciate you sitting down with me, talking all things The Hobbit. Like I said to you just before we came on, I'm a big fan of the films. Always have been, especially Peter Jackson's original Lord of the Rings trilogy. How can you not be? And yeah, I'd really appreciate you just sitting down, having a chat. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, no worries, Darcy. Anytime, anytime. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It's good. And like it's times like this with these kind of interviews, and also with things like Supernova that, you just keep reliving it. It was such an amazing time. And I still get to see some of the guys every now and then. Obviously, the last 2 years not in person.
Mm.
I've just started to watch Graham McTavish on Men in Kilts,
Yep.
which
Yeah,
I
he's
think is on
fantastic,
Netflix,
isn't he,
with
McTavish?
Sam. And I don't know Sam, but I know Graham, and it's just like I watched it. I messaged him the other day, and I said I've just watched one. It's just like him being there. The whole thing about him not wanting to share his food, and it's all real. None of that's put on. So yeah, no, it's good, and it's nice to go back to the show. I haven't been to um, been to Supernova for a wee while. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
going to be good to get back and see all them. I'm just
absolutely.
looking at all the mess in my place. It's just horrendous. But anyway, I've got heaters and all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. And you get to relive, all this great time that you had, particularly participating in the Hobbit films. And you do play the lovable dwarf of Bombur. Now, I can imagine getting into costume like this, it wouldn't be easy to get it into Bombur mode. So, how long does this take in the makeup chair, particularly getting into Bombur makeup? How long did that take you? Did you get it down? Because I know going back and watching some of the old docos and that too of the Hobbit, they say it's always harder at first, but then you kind of get it down to a little bit of a science. But how long did it kind of take to get into the Bombur outfit?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bombur was I guess the whole thing with him was the size, and um, everybody wanted their little 15 minutes of fame on the film, and very early on they said, "Look, you've got a few lines, but we're looking at doing physical gags with Bombur," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I can do that." And I talked to my agent about it, and she was, my New Zealand agent at the time, she was like, yeah, well, be careful because it's a big movie. And I'm like, well, I actually think it's going to be great to be physical. And that's how it turned out. And I remember with my first makeup test, I had, we had the hands, the big hands, and the face. And they actually, initially, over the fat suit, they had like Lycra, which was like extra tight. Because they were worried, because all the arm pieces were all individually split and they were buttoned. They had these big bands of elastic and they were buttoned. So it was each individual muscle group. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to run. They had to make it like you would a human body so they could move around. And they were worried that you were going to see all the joins in that, but they didn't have to because you didn't. So luckily, they lost the Lycra. But I mean, it was probably two things. You did get used to it, but at the same time, they were constantly looking at making it more comfortable, and they were getting feedback from us all the time. So they really developed. Like the hands, for instance, were like, all silicon. And they're like our, the number one hands, picture hands, as they'd say. And they were the ones I had to, try and catch the sausage. And, you're wearing silicon and catching a greasy sausage, which was warm, at the elf place where the old table broke. That was pretty hard. But then over time, we had like stunt hands, and they just kind of had like a light mesh inside them, and you could only kind of see the top. So yeah, there was a lot of development. It took me, I think, 2 hours to get just my prosthetics on at the start, and they got it down to about an hour and a half. So, or maybe an hour 20. It was pretty quick. But I had two artists. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, getting into that particular outfit, like you said, 2 hours, but then getting around to hour and a half. Yeah. Did you have like any like a big costume test? Like, how long did it take you to kind of start moving into that outfit? Like, how long did it take you to kind of get that movement of Bomper?
Yeah, well, we had a like a screen test. That was like a camera test because I was testing cameras all the time. They had all these new red cameras like constantly streaming in because they were the guys supplying them, and yeah, and so we had like a test, and it was kind of a test for us for all the prosthetics and the hair and the costume. It was a test for the cameras. It was also a test for Peter to see all the characters. So we'd line up individually, and then as a family, there'd be Bombur, Biffa, and Bofa, like the family members. And of course, Bofa was playing my brother, and Biffa was kind of the crazy uncle, and Bombur is like I guess he's the younger one. So anyway, we did all that, and so they got to see us all together, and yeah, that was pretty fun. But I remember after that, I was like, I don't know how I can do this for like 18 months or however long it was at the start, because it was pretty, it was all very tight and quite constricting. But as I said, like it did get better over time.
Yeah, awesome, Stephen. And you talk about you drop that name there, Peter Jackson. Now, I can imagine working with him must be amazing. Particularly, like I remember, the first time I saw the original Lord of the Rings films, what he did with that trilogy, considering that he also took a very big risk, shooting them all back to back to back. And then he decided, well, I'm going to go and do the Hobbit movies. And there were very few directors who have their flair, if you like, on a particular film trilogy like Peter Jackson does. So, I mean, the word visionary comes to mind, the innovator, the way that he has done not only the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, but also the Hobbit films.
Hmm.
And I love going and, watching them. And I did recently, or not too long ago, with the extended edition, both the Hobbit films and the Lord of the Rings films. But yeah, what is it like working alongside Peter Jackson? I mean, he must be so great to work with, particularly, going into that world and how he made Middle Earth what it is. What is it like to work with such a great director like him?
Yeah, like he's like he's a genius, and the fact that with everything that held up the production, like he was ill, he was very ill at one stage that delayed it. There was the delay with there was a big hoo-ha with the unions, and of course MGM, the studios were going bust, and they were the distributors. So there's a lot going on before it got greenlit. So he was behind like the whole time, and they were playing catch up. And I don't think anyone could have done it because he'd been there before, right? And there's a lot going on in his head. And I guess in a big production like that, especially with Peter, there's a lot of other assistant directors and a lot of people you can find stuff out. For us, it was kind of, well, for me anyway, it was like kind of pick the moments when you talk to him because he's so busy. But he was great, and he was, he loves talking about planes, and he loves talking about all other bits and bobs. He's he's obsessed with planes. He's got a whole like warehouse in the South Island, and we went to see this air show at Easter, and he took us down there, and someone asked him who's which of these planes are yours, and the answer was pretty much all of them. So he kind of funds that as well. So that's his other passion. James Cameron's very similar. He like talks about, I think at the time I met him, he was talking about the Mariana Trench because he'd just gone down and done this amazing documentary. So, yeah, I learned that as an actor. If I meet like a director I really like, I'll try and talk about something other than acting because they probably get that all the time.
Yeah, like you say, yeah, working with him and particularly the catch up, yeah, because he'd been in that world before, so it was very easy. Well, it wasn't easy, but I suppose it was a lot better for him to come back in
Mm.
and to get that film made and to get all those three films made when it did. And before you came on the call here, we were talking about some of those great cast members that you work with also. I mean, you were talking about McTavish, Martin Freeman, Ian McKellen, and even Richard Armitage. I remember actually growing up, I watched Richard Armitage in a series called Robin Hood. He was actually
Yeah.
in that show. You might have seen that, and he also done a bit of Shakespeare in that too. So yeah, when Richard Armitage was announced in the Hobbit cast, I was actually quite excited because he's quite a great talent as well. And that yeah, I think going back and watching the Hobbit films, I think yeah, you work with some great people, like I say, particularly McTavish and Armitage and Martin Freeman and Ian McKellen. So yeah, you guys kind of formed a little bit of a fellowship in a way with all the dwarves and particularly Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf. So yeah, what was that like working with those particular cast members? They must be able to get such a great rise out of you. I'm sure there was some jokes and a lot of fun to be had on set as well.
Yeah, that was probably the best part of it was like making, and the friends that I made at those over those months, the friendships I'll have forever. It was kind of like boys club. It was being at school, naughty schoolboys most of the time. So that was the best. And work was great. Work was fun. For the roles that we had, most of the dwarves, aside from, I mean, Graham had a reasonably big role, so did Ken, and Richard obviously, and Martin and Ian. Whereas a lot of the rest of us, I like Dean and Aidan as well, but a lot of the rest of us were kind of like in the background a lot. But still had a lot to do. But we sort of had to find other things to amuse ourselves, and like it was so much fun just being together. And to this day, that's still the best thing about that job was making those friendships. And we had good times, especially on location. We'd go to certain places and find certain restaurants we'd be staying at and going to, and find a wine that we like and drink them out of that. And I mean, it wasn't all like rowdy, but it was just you're on tour pretty much with these guys, and having a grand old time.
Before I do let you go, Stephen, one last thing I have to ask you, like, particularly with all the Hobbit films, like Peter Jackson did all the three. Particularly, I think it's An Unexpected Journey, Desolation Smog, and Battle of Five Armies.
Mm.
Is there, out of the three, is there one for you that was a particular great time to shoot, or do you have a particular favorite out of the three Hobbit films?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when we shot them, like all the main part of photography, there were only ever going to be two films.
Yeah.
And we didn't find out there were going to be three films until the day of the wrap party, like right at the very end, in 2012, like in June or July. So, so we didn't really know, and then they just changed the story at different places. But I don't know. I think, like, for different reasons, I think the first one was great because that was when we first met, and we went to Bag End, and that's kind of when shit got real. We were in Bag End, and then Ian comes dressed in as Gandalf, and I remember sitting next to Adam Brown, and we're just like, are we actually meant to be here? Is this happening? Have they made a mistake? Is it meant to be another Stephen Hunter and Adam Brown? And we kept making that joke all the time, thinking they're just going to pull us out and say, sorry, we've made a mistake at any time. So that was really cool. And then obviously I like the Desolation of Smug because I'm in it more, and I've got my big run.
Yep.
The big run from Bayonne, and that was that was pretty nice. Because to be fair, in the theatrical edition of Battle of Five Armies, we kind of went missing a little bit in the battle. So I probably like the second one.
Yeah, yeah. Second one's great. First one's great. I'm a little bit like that too with the original. I love the first one and the last one with the original Lord of the Rings trilogy because it's pretty much the particularly the first one. It's the one that sets up the entire trilogy going forward, and particularly I think in the first one, the Unexpected Journey. You're in Bilbo's house, you're in the Shire. Particularly that song. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates, and you
Yeah,
get to
yeah.
kind of play around with all the food and all the. So yeah, that's why I think those moments, particularly because without the first one, it sets the whole tone going forward, and that's why I love all the. I
Mm.
think the first one of both, and but there's like I say, the second one, the Desolation of Smog, is great too. So yeah, I think there's so much great moments to love in all three.
Mm.
So, Stephen, mate, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for sitting down, having a chat. Like, I love to talk all things The Hobbit. I love to talk all things Lord of the Rings. Like I said to you before, I've been there, been to the Hobbit, locations as well. And I remember I strolled, I'll tell you a little story about this. I strolled there on the Hobbit location on my birthday. I did a Contiki tour around New Zealand, around the North Island. And we
Mm.
got there on my birthday, and I said it to the tour guide, and it ended up getting like free drinks at the Green Dragon, which is cool,
Mm.
at the Hobbit. So yeah, and that was just such a special moment for me as well, because yeah, I love all of that stuff. I love Middle Earth. Like I said straight at the beginning, you can just really get immersed in all things in that world, and particularly now we got, I think, the Amazon series coming
Mm.
with the Lord of the Rings as well. So, yep, it's a fantastic universe, and I just love to be able to have a chat with people like yourself to talk, what it actually was like to actually be there, shoot this great stuff, and yeah, you're off to the pop culture convention. You get to meet all these great fans who appreciate it just as much as me and you as well. And yeah, you kind of, even though you shot, The Hobbit a number of years ago, it kind of brings all those memories back, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, no, it's good. I always love going to conventions, and not everyone enjoys conventions. Not everyone goes to conventions, and my advice to people is like, if you don't want to do it, if you're not interested in meeting the fans, then don't, because the whole point is that, to me anyway, especially with something like Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that people are so into it, and they were into it before we turned up, before Lord of the
Mm.
Rings turned up, the films, that they were into the literature, and they just want to share that, and I guess my golden rule with conventions is just don't be a dick, just try and make, and I just try and make people's day and just be nice, just be
Yep.
pleasant, and the fact that people are interested and they want to talk to you and they're excited about what you do. I mean, you could walk into a store or something and someone could shout at you, like it's a really nice experience. So I love doing them, and I'll continue to
Yep.
do them as long as it works. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to everyone coming along this Saturday and Sunday out at
Mhm.
Homebush at the
Yep.
Sydney Showground. So it's going to be, it's going to be fun. Really looking
Yep.
forward to it.
Sounds good, mate. Well, yeah, like I say, thanks for having a bit of a chat with me. I really appreciate it. I know everyone really appreciates it, particularly talking all things about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, mate. Really appreciate it, Stephen. And yeah, enjoy all things Supernova. And yeah, all the best for going forward. Any other acting gigs you've got coming up. And yeah, all the best going forward, mate. And I really appreciate you sitting down having a chat with me.
No worries. Thanks. See ya.
Thanks, buddy. Okay, guys. Well, there it is. A short little interview there with Stephen Hunter, who played the role of Bombur in the Hobbit films. I know that I love the Hobbit films. I love Lord of the Rings films. So all that I ask is that you thumb up this video, you subscribe, because I love to talk all things movies, TV, and pop culture. And yeah, that was a real treat to be able to talk about what it was like to be there, shoot those films, work with Peter Jackson, work with such an amazing cast. So yeah, I want to know, what of the Hobbit films is your favorite? Is it the first one, An Unexpected Journey? Is it the Desolation of Smaug, or is it the Battle of Five Armies? And yeah, what are some of your favorite bumper moments, or some of your favorite moments with the dwarves or the hobbits? Get really immersed in this stuff, guys. Yeah, I want to hear all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And yeah, subscribe, guys, and like this video, because that is how I continue to bring you great guests and make great content going forward. Righto, guys, my name is Darcy Oliver. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.